This episode of the Beauty Industry Podcast was brought to you by Beauty SaleMate, online retail and sales training for therapists treating clients. Hello and welcome to the Beauty Industry Podcast, your online support community for the professional beauty industry. I am your host, founding director of Beauty Industry, Tamara Shaw. Here we are closing the competitive gap and speaking your language. This is a platform created and dedicated to the professional beauty industry, valuing community over competition. We serve to help connect you with inspiration from industry experts, expand your knowledge through educational pieces, and bring you the latest in product and technology innovation. This is Beauty Industry. Today's guest is Kelly George of Kelly George Aesthetics. With over 12 years' experience in the medical aesthetics industry, Kelly's career in medical aesthetics began in 2006 in marketing and events, working for one of the top cosmeceutical companies in Australia, Allergan. After studying to become a registered nurse, Kelly opened her very own clinic, and over the past 3 years, Kelly has been successfully building up her brand, Kelly George Aesthetics, into one of Australia's leading skin and anti-aging destinations. Kelly's philosophy, which you'll hear throughout the episode today, is that great skin is achieved through science, not marketing gimmicks. As a brief introduction to Kelly's success story, here are a few key points which make her a standout guest to feature on the podcast today. In 2018, Kelly was the only Australian on the global judging panel for the MyFaceMyBody Awards in Los Angeles. In 2018, Kelly also received Plastic Surgery Hub's Award for Australia's favourite injector and is also a member of the faculty for the first global online aesthetic conference. And Kelly has also been named one of the MyFaceMyBody Global Ultimate 100 in 2009, a guide which is curated by experts which showcases and profiles the top 100 medical aesthetic professionals from around the world, which is so amazing. We're so proud to have her. Kelly shares with us how she moved from Allergan into the cosmetical world, trends that we should watch out for over the coming years, as well as giving us loads of advice for budding injectors, and also gives us a sneak peek of KGA Body, a new product range that is currently being launched into the market. Here's Kelly and I for Beauty Industry. Kelly, we start our podcast every single week with the same question, and we want to find out how our guests actually entered into the industry. And I guess your entry is slightly different with your most recent role being at Allergan. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I guess it is quite interesting because my background is actually in marketing. So my role with Allergan was marketing related and events, and with being a pharmaceutical company, the marketing there is slightly different than what you would normally do, for maybe a car dealership. So a lot of what I did was basically putting together patient brochures and educational pieces for what we were doing, which is facial aesthetics. So I found that within my role, I was doing a lot more clinical research and needing to understand the science behind the products, facial anatomy, or things like that. And so I discovered that I had a passion for something that I knew nothing about, and so I wanted to know more about it. And I stayed with Allergan for quite some time because I just genuinely loved what I was doing there. However, as my role developed and as I started to spend more time in the clinical settings with, international key opinion leaders, national doctors and nurses and trainers in this field, I realized that actually I really did want to do the clinical side more than the marketing side. And so I did actually decide to leave my role at Allergan and go back to university to do a nursing degree, which was something that I actually joked about my whole life that I would never do because my mum's a nurse and I didn't want to follow in the footsteps. So it was quite interesting. And when I made the phone call to her that day to say, I'm going to do nursing, she just went, "You are not. That's ridiculous." But then I said, "But no, not to be a nurse, to be a cosmetic nurse." And she was like, "Oh, of course you are." It was much more. And, I think she always saw that that's somewhere that I would head eventually.
Yeah.
the beauty
Yeah,
industry.
yeah, amazing. So, talk me through that kind of decision. I mean, going from a full-time, somewhat quite high-profile role to going back into studying, that can be quite a daunting decision to make.
Absolutely. It was. It was actually quite challenging. My role was really varied, a lot of perks, obviously, lots of travel. Really, really loved the team that I worked with as well. A lot of my best friends, we're still best friends from there. But I just knew in my heart that this is what I wanted to do. So yeah, I went back to uni. Was a full-time student. So I went from a reasonable pay to absolutely no pay. Was doing, you don't just get to do this without being a proper nurse. So I was doing all the clinical things that you have to do. So that first year I was just on the general ward doing all those general things that you would do with patients. And some days were harder than others. And I was always driven by, I knew exactly what I wanted to do at the end of that 3 years. So I just put my all into it, to be perfectly honest. And I loved everything I learned along the way. And I'm really appreciative of doing that, because some people think, oh well, do you really need to be a nurse to do what you do? And yes, you do, because the skin really is the largest organ. And I know people say that all the time and it sounds a bit cliche, but if you don't understand health and well-being, it's really hard to do what we do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I so appreciate injectors having to go through that entire nursing degree, literally from newborn to aged care and everything in the middle, because you do sometimes, you just want to execute rather than kind of building the foundations. But I guess, you've got so much more of an appreciation for every single pathway that it takes to, go into that more kind of cosmetic arena.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the hardest things I had to do was obviously the mental health unit, and I spent 3 weeks in a mental health ward, and I found that very confronting and really quite difficult. But what I found in my role is that you really do need that kind of background and that understanding of how people's minds work, because you see so many people with a really warped sense of how they look or how they feel about themselves. And one of the main parts of my role is to help people feel better about themselves. It's not just about how they look. So, you do become a bit of a mini counselor, and you do find out things about people well before anyone else, pregnancies and all sorts of things that are great. But you really do need to have an understanding of how to deal with all these different personalities and different types of behaviors.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess I want to ask you then, were there any times throughout studying nursing that you just thought, oh my goodness, this is beyond belief of what I thought it would take to be an injector, and that you wanted to just give up?
Yeah, it would have been the mental health unit. I went up there and I had my first day in that ward, and it was a pretty intense ward, that particular one that I worked at. And the the first hour there was, learning what to do if you're in an emergency situation with a patient trying to harm you. You've got, sort of all these bells and whistles that you need to call. They've got these special instruments that you can use to help a patient if they've tried to do harm to themselves, but that it's not sharp enough that they can then harm you with it. And in that hour, I just was that was the one moment where I went, I don't think I can do this. The lovely, lovely nurse unit manager of that, she could see it in my face, and she said, look, take some time, just go and sit out in your car for a little while. And I did. I called my mum and I just said, that's it. And this was third year. I was nearly done. I was like, I don't think I can do it. She was like, yes, you can. So there were a lot of tears on that particular clinical placement, but I did get through it.
Amazing. And so you come out of nursing, go into cosmetics, and now you've actually got your own business. When was that moment between, practicing being an injector and injecting to going, actually, maybe I can do this for myself, or maybe I'll open my own business?
Oh, well, actually, I knew I was going to open for myself from before I even started. So I did things, obviously, because with my role at Allergan, I spent a lot of time developing the actual program that teaches doctors and nurses how to do what we do. So I understood the theory completely. I also, when I was doing my nursing, I actually did my EN, so my enrolled nursing, at the same time as my registered nursing. So by second year, I was actually an enrolled nurse, so I was able to inject. And in that last year of nursing, while I was becoming a registered nurse, I worked with a doctor where we travelled around and we did a lot of regional locations. So I worked pretty much every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, full days alongside him, just learning the actual, I guess, practical component of it. Now, given that I already sort of knew the theory behind everything. So I actually officially graduated my registered nursing a year later on the 20th of March, and I opened my clinic on the 9th of April. So there was about 2 weeks in between. So that last year of nursing, I was also putting together my business plan. I was picking my location. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Your clinic is in Tamworth, and for those who don't know, it's a little bit more rural than, let's say, Sydney. Were you ever worried about or had concerns about opening in such a unique area?
No, I wasn't. And the reason was because, so my original plan was to go back to Sydney, which is where I'm from. But in that year that I was working with the doctor that I said, and we were doing lots of regional locations. So we were doing Tamworth, we were doing Dubbo, Orange, Goulburn, Bateman's Bay. What I found was that women in these regions absolutely wanted it just as much as people in Sydney, but they weren't getting the experienced injectors, and they weren't getting people that were really looking at it holistically. So yes, there were all these fly-in, fly-out doctors who were every 6 to 12 weeks would come and put a bit of Botox in someone's face. But what they weren't doing was looking at the skin as a whole. And what they weren't doing was, all the other bits and pieces that you need to really do to age well. It's all well and good to use injectables on a 20 and a 30-year-old. But when you get into your 40s, 50s and 60s, there's so many more things that we need to do to actually be able to make you look fresher. Because I think if you've got really sun-damaged, crepey, aged skin and you've not done much else than a few injectables along the line, you get to a point where it actually makes you look worse. And so I wanted to, I guess, my original business plan was to bring that city feel and that city experience to the region.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yes, so I am proud to say that a normal day these days starts at 4:30 and I go to the gym. That wasn't always the case. But for a good 4 months now, I have been at the gym every morning for about 2 hours. So I'm definitely feeling better by that. Obviously, like any other working mum, I then take my kids to school. I'm usually at my clinic by about 8 a.m. and get about an hour's worth of sort of preparation and admin in before my clients will normally start at about 9 o'clock. And look, I am fully booked pretty much every day. It's rare for me to have downtime from in between 9 and 3, unless I've gone ahead and blocked myself out in advance. And then I like to finish at 3 so I can still pick my 12-year-old up from school. He probably won't want me to do that for much longer, but while he does, I'm going to take it. And then I probably spend a good 2 hours at home just planning social media, maybe writing some blogs. I've been doing quite a few interviews for different magazines on different procedures, so that takes up a lot of time to just make sure I word those right. And so I take a bit of time to do all of that other side of the thing.
Yeah, amazing. So dynamic. I mean, there's so much in there. You're a mum, wow, which is just, that obviously means that you would have had your little boy when you were studying as well.
So he was young actually. So I've actually got a 17-year-old and a 12-year-old.
Amazing.
So 17-year-old's probably been the difficult one, I would say.
And so you're essentially all arms of the business then, because you're doing PR, you're doing your marketing, you're doing social media, waking up at ridiculous o'clock and doing 2 hours at the gym, which is basically superhuman. When and what do you outsource so that you can give yourself a little bit more time for your clients?
Well, look, I do have the most amazing practice manager on the planet, and my staff are wonderful. So I've got a beautiful team. Let's go back 2.5 years. I did not have that, and things were quite a struggle. I literally was doing everything at the clinic. Now, I've got all the admin side of things that I like to do for promotion of the business and even promotion of, I guess, myself in terms of the industry and getting out there and speaking at events and things like that. But everything that happens within the clinic in terms of all those little things like client bookings and ordering product and stock and, consumables, I don't have to worry about any of that anymore. So I definitely couldn't do it without an amazing team. I did try to outsource social media stuff for a little while, but what I found was that because I am, I guess, the face of my business, but also the voice of my business, it wasn't engaging at all. And people kind of could tell straight away that it wasn't my post or it wasn't my voice. And my engagement dropped quite significantly. So I did have to take that back. But I do work with a girl who kind of puts my graphics together and things like that. And she's fabulous too, because I just sort of say, hey, I need this. And she's really quick turnaround. And so I do have like some pretty good support people around me.
Good. I think it's difficult, you know, as business owners. Sometimes we want to try and do everything, but sometimes our time is better spent, as you said, getting somebody in the space who can manage and organize the day-to-day runnings and operations. When did you realize that it was time maybe to enlist some of that help, and how did you go about doing so? Because it's such a scary thing in being able to hand over your business and parts of your business to someone else and have that complete trust in them that they're going to do the exact same level of role that you would.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I went through a few staff members that were all wrong for me. And then I had a period of probably 2 months after the third incorrect staff member where I actually just had to refocus and regroup my whole sort of thinking on staffing and how to manage this, because something just wasn't right, and I realized it was actually costing me more money to have the wrong staff member in there. And so I think with that sort of realization that, you know, don't be desperate about who you hire, Kelly. Just make sure she or he is the right person. And as soon as I kind of lost that, I just need someone here now, and took my time and found the right person, it all fell into place. Now that doesn't mean I handed everything over straight away. It took me a good 12 months to really, you know, trust and understand that this was something I could do. And, you know, I probably didn't have a holiday for the first 2.5 years, you know, or if I did, it was like a quick one and I was online the whole time.
Yeah.
Recently, I spent nearly a month in America, and don't get me wrong, I was still thinking about things, but it was the first time that I knew everything was okay here without me, and I didn't actually have to worry about it. But it does take time.
After the break, Kelly and I talk about the parameters of treating in the beauty industry, as well as her new product range, which actually launched this week. But first, a word from our sponsor. Team, traveling around in my development sessions through clinic, salon and spa, there's nothing more that I hear more frequently than, Tamara, how do I help my therapist prescribe more product and rebook their clients for better results? So with that in mind, I would like to introduce to you Beauté SaleMate, an online therapist retail and sales training portal. All you have to do is simply log into the website, choose a payment package that best suits you and your team, and away you go, watching interactive videos, online consultation techniques, client behaviours, rebooking skills, and retail sales from the touch of a button in your beauty space. Increase your average client spend, boost your rebooking percentage, and add to your client's product basket in a matter of minutes. You can find out all of this information and more on the website at beautésalemate.com. As Oscar Wilde said, you can never be overeducated or overdressed, and I so believe that. And now back to Kelly. It's funny, I think it's probably the social media world that spins business owners into, you know, the kind of comparison, and it looks all very shiny and glossy. And, you know, as you said, you've just took 2 months off, and some people see that and probably think, oh my God, how come I can't do that, you know, within the first 6 months or within the first year of my business? And it's refreshing for you to say, you know, there was no holiday for 2.5 years to start off with. And now only have I got to that point, because I guess sometimes on podcasts like this one, even so, we can chat with inspirational people like yourself, and we only see the gloss and we don't kind of see all of the challenges in the middle.
Absolutely. And you know, and I didn't take holidays for those first 2.5 years because I was everything. I was the receptionist, I was the cleaner, I needed to know all the stock levels, and I was still trying to see patients, and I was still trying to grow a new business. And there's that fear behind, are people going to come back? Are you doing all the right things? And yeah, it was a stressful time. And, you know, people say, I think they say it's 2 years and then you can start to relax, and it kind of was. So I guess that's a saying for a reason. But I mean, I don't ever relax. I still lay in bed at night thinking about what to do next, and you're constantly planning your next move because you don't want to fall behind the 8 ball, really.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I'm wondering then, when you are treating, what are some of the most popular treatments that you're providing at the moment?
So obviously injectables are quite popular, but the very next thing, and possibly even as popular as injectables, is for us, we do vampire facials. So microneedling with, PRP injections. We could do up to 10 of them a day, truly,
Wow.
because they're the most amazing procedures for almost everything, acne scarring, stretch marks, general aging, sun damage, even pigmentation on darker skin types that can't really go the laser route. And we just see such amazing results. Combination of probably some good at-home medical grade skincare with the vampire facials and the skin needling, but we really transform some, and we see a lot of farmers' wives and people that have been out on the land and really done not a lot for 50, 60 years. And some of the greatest things that happen here are when people, okay, just the other day, actually, I had a lady in her 60s who had done nothing. And we have spent about 8 months with products, a little bit of injectables, but mainly vampire facials and PRP. And we kind of got to the end of that first treatment round. And she actually sort of started crying and gave me a big hug and just said, look, my skin has never been this good, for, probably 20 years since I've felt this good about my skin. And that's my favorite part of my job, honestly.
Yeah, it's a complete transformation of self-esteem and self-confidence, value, worth, and it really is bananas to me how some people say it's just all so superficial and aesthetic, because it goes so much deeper than that.
Oh, it does, because you've got to look in that mirror every day, and if what you see when you look in that mirror makes you unhappy, that's going to affect your entire life. So if you can then wake up in the morning and be like, oh my gosh, I actually feel comfortable in my own skin, it's going to change who you are. And so it's not superficial at all.
No. I'm wondering then, what are some cosmetic trends that perhaps you're seeing come through and patients are asking you to perform now, or that you've kind of got your finger on the pulse on from the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think we've been shifting for a little while now, and it's just going to continue going in that direction. But natural is in. So, like I said, you can, obviously injectables are always going to have a place, but that focus on really healthy, glowing skin, and preventative stuff. The younger girls are really getting prevention is key. I think Instagram helps with that because there's so much out there, and they're watching all these people doing all these preventative treatments. So, we're I guess with the next generation of clients or patients, we're really set up to kind of have them having amazing skin going forward, because we've done all these little things along the way to increase their collagen production and to make sure their cell turnover stays, nice and accelerated and things like that. The other thing, jaw lines and the type of filler that isn't just about making big lips or making big cheeks, but about, okay, so your actual the bone structure is starting to shrink as part of the aging process. So let's just go in there and recreate that jaw structure again. So it's not about sort of changing what your face looks like, but just reestablishing what you may have had 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and just kind of enhancing that and bringing out that natural beauty, as you said, not replacing a limb or anything
Exactly.
like that, but literally just working with what you've got.
Tweaking your features and making you the best that you can be, but not trying to go, okay, well, here's a cookie cutter version of what you should be, and let's make everyone look the same.
I've spoken on our podcast in the past. I've had my lips done twice. Once was a horrific experience. I had bruising and swelling, and oh my goodness, my partner left the house for 3 days because he just said, I cannot look at you. Yes. And then the next one was the most incredible experience, where there was absolutely no swelling and no bleeding or anything. And I'm wondering, there are so many internal and external factors that can result in a good, just say, a not so good treatment. But I'm wondering then what you think it takes to be an exceptional injector, because it's almost like some people just have it and some people have to work harder to have it.
Absolutely. So, the clinical skills is the bare minimum, I think, actually, because what you actually need is an aesthetic eye. You need to understand what you're looking at, because you can be a doctor or a nurse and you can understand, okay, well, this is a drug and this is where we put it. But unless you really understand what you're looking at and you're assessing it, and you can assess, this person's individual muscular action and exactly where they've lost volume, it's going to be really difficult, because you cannot just go and put the needle in the exact same spot for every single person. So you need to have that eye. I think experience is just, you can't beat experience, because I think the more people you treat, the more cautious you become, because you may have seen things go wrong along the way, or just being in the industry and being around other injectors. So one of the biggest things I think is, if you've worked with lots of other injectors and picked up tiny little bits and pieces from each of them. So everyone's got their own technique and everyone likes to do things a certain ways. But if you've worked with lots of different people, what I found is that I tended to take a little bit from this person, a little bit from this person, and then you make it your own. But you build on that. And, I just don't think you can just work all on your own without really getting out there and talking to other people and, going to lots of conferences and just watching what other people do all the time. You might think, look, I've been in the industry for 10 years, I don't need to see someone doing their lips. But actually, if it's a completely different technique to yours, you might just walk away with like one tiny other little bit that you can do for a patient that, you don't always see with the same patients. Even myself, being where I am, I don't do a lot of chins, for example, because it's the country and it just doesn't seem to be a big important thing. So for me, I now probably haven't done someone's chin for 6 months, so I don't feel confident in that anymore. But, these younger injectors, so I probably would refer them to someone else, but you get these really brand new people going, well, I've never done a chin, but I'll have a crack at it. And that's where things go wrong. So I think the ability to really understand your own expertise and your own limitations. And then I think one other really important thing is the ability to say no, because I say no to patients all the time. Someone will be standing there with a wad of cash, I've got this to spend, I've just got my tax return and I want to spend it on my face. And if it's not suitable for them, you need to say no. You need to be ethical enough to say no. But you need to have the ability to kind of say, that is not the right treatment for you. I know you've seen it on Instagram or YouTube or somewhere, and I know you think that's what you want because maybe a Kardashian had it. But for you, it's not the appropriate route of treatment. And so I think once you are experienced enough to say no to your patients, things fall into place.
Yeah, and I love that you've really positioned yourself as a leader in the cosmetic space, but you're also humble enough to know, hang on, actually, I am the first to admit that I don't know everything. I can always learn, and there's something else that I can always take away from something else. I really admire that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that's what makes a good injector, because you don't know everything.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's always the opportunity to learn, and two, having treatments, I think that's such a big thing for anyone who's performing anything really.
Yeah.
is feeling how somebody else does things, because we are such kinetic people as, nurses and injectors and therapists. We want to help by doing and by feeling. And when we experience something, we go, oh, hang on, no, that was a little bit painful, or that pulled something, or I loved that.
Yes.
How can I do that?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And you, as I said, you are really a leader in the space now, and you've had some pretty incredible career highlights. I'm wondering what have been the ones that have stood out for you along your journey?
Yeah, I have had some cool things happen. Look, I would probably say judging for the American MyFaceMyBody Awards was a huge moment for me. Obviously, by the time I got to sort of judge them, they were already the top clinics within the country. So for me, who's always trying to strive to be the best, it was so great to sort of just spend a day sitting down and looking through all these amazing clinics and picking up bits and pieces and listening to their philosophies and the way that they go about treating clients, or the consultation process, or even just simple things like their photography process, because that's such a huge thing in our industry. So I got so much out of that. But I would have to say number one was meeting Dr. Nasser from Botched. I am a massive fangirl there, and look, being at that award that award ceremony in LA, and I was presenting on the night, and so was he. So we were introduced as fellow presenters. And I'm trying to be like, yeah, I'm cool. I'm on the same level as Dr. Nasser, but dying inside and wanting to take selfies and texting my mum because she also loves him. So, that was a highlight. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, incredible. And so tell me about the Plastic Surgeries Hub Award for Australia's Favourite Injector, because that is a huge title.
Yeah, that was a really cool one too. So Plastic Surgery Hub is a really cool place for people to go if they want to, learn about any of the procedures within our industry. And what I really like about it, I guess, is that it's unbiased. So it's just information for consumers, because there is so much stuff out there. But this particular award, I think, was so great because it's client voted. So it was my clients that got behind me and voted. And we are in a regional location, so we do have lots of clients. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm fully booked all day, every day, but we probably don't have the numbers that some of the bigger city clinics would have, and even particularly the clinics with, multi-franchises and all sorts of things like that. So, yeah, I guess to know that my clients, would take the time to log on to something and vote for me and put in a lovely comment was really awesome. And that's what I do it for. So that was touching. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And then I guess probably the highlights, which, sometimes we don't put up on a pedestal, as you said before, just the little moments between clients that tell you, that their self-confidence have changed, or, they burst into tears because they just so shocked at, how they look, and they look 10 years younger. Kind of, I think that would also be quite a special moment.
Yeah, no, it is great. And look, we have a really wonderful reputation here. Our word, it's people coming through the door, it's about 85% word of mouth.
Wow.
And I kind of sometimes don't really, I forget that, or I don't think about it, consciously. But I was doing a talk the other day on word of mouth, and, I looked at my statistics, and I took a moment to just go, what, that's amazing. Like I barely do any advertising. Actually, I don't do any advertising. It's just social media. I don't pay for radio ads. I don't pay for newspapers or anything like that. It is people coming here. They're happy. They tell their friends to come here. And that in itself is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And so in preparation for my chat with you, I noticed on your Instagram, KGA Body.
Yes.
Can you share with us a little sneak peek of what this is and what we can expect?
I can. I'm so excited because we're so close to launch date. So we're about a month away from the official launch. So KGA Body is basically a range of active skincare, but designed specifically for the body. So in our industry, obviously, the market is saturated with all these great, wonderful, active medical grade ranges for the face, which is fabulous. But what I was finding in my clinic is, we were sorting out the face and everything was looking good from the neck up. And then, women in their 40s and 50s are, what can we do about our hands, or what can we do about our decolletage? And, while there's no problem using those amazing products that already exist for the face on the body, they tend to be quite small and they tend to be quite expensive. So a lot of us, even me getting it at wholesale, I don't I just slather that all over my legs. So I sort of thought to myself, what, there's a real gap here. We really need, it's just skin. It will respond the same way to retinols and vitamin C's and all of those great things that we now know we need to put on our face. So why shouldn't there be something designed for the body? So my main focus was making sure we get these really good active ingredients into these products, so they're really highly science-based, but then trying to work with, the pharmaceutical companies and things like that, so that I could make sure it was really cost-effective for the consumers, because it is a body product. So for a body product, I think you want large containers, affordable pricing. You want it to feel affordable. So that took me about a year, that part of it, to kind of get that cost right. And then as soon as we got that right, we've been doing all the trials and the testing, and it's going amazingly. And I just can't wait for it to launch.
Fantastic. Either have I. That sounds so great. You're so right. Sometimes I look at my, my retinols or my Bs, and, I might have a bit of eczema, and I think, I should just put a bit of a B serum on there. And then I go, oh my goodness, that cost me $150.
Exactly.
I don't want to put that on my arm. So I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. And what kind of beauty spaces or cosmetic spaces are you hoping to launch the product into?
So I really like it to sit in cosmetic clinics similar to my own, because, and look, I've been speaking to a lot of people in the industry, and everyone is really excited, because I think everyone with a cosmetic clinic like mine feels the same. We need some amazing body product to sell to our clients because they want it. So yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be on the shelves of most Australian cosmetic clinics, possibly even internationally at some point. But also there will be an online component, because that's the world we live in, and I really hope that people love it.
Amazing. And I'm wondering then, a small side question, as a skin therapist, and we do have quite a few skin therapists who listen to this podcast,
Yes.
how can we actually help you, refer a patient on for injectables? Obviously, we're talking about skincare and we are recommending retinols and Bs and AHAs and things like that. But there is a limitation to where we can get to in terms of anti-aging or slowing the aging process. What is your ideal pre-step prior to performing injectables that we can prescribe to clients?
Well, when I'm doing a consultation, I like to look at it as a whole anyway. So if you, as a skin therapist, if they're meeting someone for the first time and they're chatting, I mean, I don't think there's any harm in asking if that's something that they're open to, if that's something that they've ever considered, or even if that's something that they've had somewhere else, because then you know what you're working with. Younger patients, I think the preventative conversation is a really easy route to take. Older patients who have never really stepped into that realm tend to be a little bit more cautious, and I think they're still living in that, I don't want my friends to know, I don't want people to know that I might do that. So I guess in my clinic, I know my therapists have those conversations, even just in the laser hair removal room sometimes. It's about talking about what you have. It's about talking about just talking about it positively, and you may need to do it 3 or 4 times before that person will even be open to it. But eventually, I've had some patients who have been to my clinic maybe 8 times with one of the girls having laser hair removal or whatever it might be, and then I finally meet them for an actual injectables consultation. So sometimes it can be a bit of a journey for that person, but next thing you know, they're my best client because they just took a little bit longer to get there.
Yeah, and I guess just opening the door for that conversation. And, I think some therapists get quite nervous around offending clients.
Yes.
And they don't want to say, oh, you've got fine lines and wrinkles. Have you thought about having injectables? Just, I guess, but being a little bit more down to earth and just approachable with it. Many times I've said to clients, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, my lips are really swollen because I've just had them done, and they've gone, oh my goodness, I was just looking at them thinking how amazing they are, and then that opens the conversation for, well, does it hurt, how much does it cost, who do you see, and all of a sudden you've got that referral.
Absolutely. And you know what, the other thing is I have heard a lot that like some therapists are a little bit worried about saying, oh, by the way, look, you've got wrinkles. You don't say it like that. But the fact that that person is laying on your bed having some sort of procedure for their skin means that they're probably feeling like they need a bit of help anyway. So if it's approached maturely and if it's approached sensitively, I think you'll find most people are open to some sort of discussion about it.
Yeah, amazing. And Kelly, just to finish off today, I'd love to get your advice to any budding injectors that we have out there who may be currently in the beauty space or even the nursing space, who their role is exactly like yours, and maybe they're looking up to you for some inspiration on how they can get there, or any tips and tricks maybe you've learned along the way that you want to share.
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, actually. So if they're beauty therapists.
Beauty therapists, skin specialists.
Wanting to enter into the world of cosmetic nursing.
Yeah, some people already are nursing out there in our podcast land, and they're traveling through the nursing degree, and they're also doing beauty therapy as a full-time job as well.
Yeah, so I think the hardest part for nurses wanting to get into this industry now is that it's pretty saturated, and I hear it all the time. If you're in a big city, obviously it's going to be much, much easier. There are postgrad courses that, you may not necessarily need if you have a bit of a beauty background and now you've got that clinical background and you're lucky enough to get a job at a really reputable clinic where you'll be trained and you're working alongside really reputable doctors and nurses who have been in the industry for a long time. But they are difficult to get. So the postgraduate courses, the reason I recommend them a lot of the time is because I think, like I said before, experience and just being around and having hands-on practice is really, really important. What worries me the most is a lot of the big franchise clinics will take newbies who haven't done, haven't got any experience in this industry, purely just have a nursing degree, and that's okay. But I've spoken to a lot of nurses who have got those sorts of jobs, and they've been given a day's training, and then next minute they're in a clinic by themselves, and they're really fearful because they're not comfortable with that. And they've kind of got this pressure to, well, if this person walks in and wants lips, give them lips, because they're not even, it's not like myself where this is my own clinic and I can say no, and I can say, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. They're pushed to make money. They're pushed to do these procedures. So I think for those who want to, if you were to go and do that postgraduate training, at least even if you then did get a job in one of the franchise clinics, you've got that extra training, you've got that experience that you can then feel comfortable now stepping into an actual clinical role without a lot of support around you.
And it almost sounds a little bit elemental, as in, knowing what your personal and professional values are as well. And if you don't feel comfortable performing a treatment, then, there should be, and there should be no amount of money or budget or target or anything like that should drive you to just treat for the sake of treating.
100%. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I find in this industry that upsets me the most, is that we're starting to, some places lose sight of that. And, you go through nursing school and you even go through medical school, all we talk about the whole way through, there's a background of ethical behavior and kind of, the code of ethics and professional conduct. And then next thing you step out into the corporate world, so to speak. So you're out of that sort of healthcare. And a lot of the time, I think a lot of the big chains might ask you to kind of forget about those things that you've learned. But if you've really got to be true to yourself. So look, I think just get yourself educated. Remember that you don't always know everything. Say no if you're not comfortable, because otherwise, at the end of the day, it's your registration that you'll lose. And, the person who owns the company isn't going to mind that you now can't even go back to the hospital because you've lost your registration.
Yeah, thank you so much for that advice. I think many of our budding cosmetic nurses and people who are just interested in kind of that cosmetic injectables world will definitely appreciate that from yourself. So thank you so much as well for your time today. As I mentioned at the start of this episode, you and I had a brief chat offline, and it's a Friday morning that we're recording, so it's always the busiest time in our clinics, and stepping out to have a chat and to share your information, wealth of knowledge with our audience is amazing.
Thank you for having me, Tamara.
Isn't it refreshing to hear the challenges as well as the success of people who you see on social media absolutely killing it, and realize that they are just as much of a human as you or I? If you haven't already, I highly recommend taking a look at Kelly's Instagram page at Kelly George Aesthetics for some of her before and after photos, and in particular the luscious lips and accented jawlines, which highlight her work and also show you a behind the scenes day in the life of an injector. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into the conversation with Kelly and I. I think whether you're a budding injector or not, the takeaways from this episode were to understand your personal and professional values when treating, to honour the client in front of you, and to always say yes to an opportunity to learn. If you have loved today's conversation, please do share it with your friends and your colleagues so that we can continue to share this inspirational content with you and to keep our industry motivated in every way possible. And if I can ask one more thing while you're over there, continue to show us some love by giving us a 5-star rating or leaving us a review, as that really does help us move through those podcast charts and be seen by more eyes. As always, you can find more of Beauty Industry goodness across all of the social media channels at Beauty Industry, and myself at Tamara Shaw Reid. Until next time, stay connected.